Hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. Bard College, may I help you? No, hold on, let me do that better. Bard College, may I help you? Yes. If you used to use a telephone on a cord and you called an operator at Bard to get the health clinic or I don't know, the secretary, I don't remember why we called so often. Some professor's office, I don't know. She would say, Bard College, may I help you? Is that possible anymore? I don't know. But, oh yeah, sorry my live people, this stupid effing computer, it gets really contrasty. I have to like fuck around with it. Okay, so Bard people, if you knew me in the old days, don't I look great? I decided to wear ripped shirts and still have hairy armpits for you. And my daughter is coming to Bard. Yeah, that's all I have to say to you, Bard people. I'll say more as we go on. But that said, I'm going to try to remind everybody that what you can do if you don't have props. But forgive me if I don't completely remember to remind you, but just know that you can get away without props. But if you have props, then I would like you to take a block. So if you have a couple blankets and a block, that would be great. Take a block, put it lengthwise. I'm going to sit facing you, so wherever you are on your mat. But I'm going to sit in a supported virasana basically, and then I'm going to put a blanket that I started in a square, and then folded again in a rectangle. I'm going to plop that right on top. It's a very loose, easy virasana. If you're like an old 65-year-old Bard alumni and you don't want to sit in virasana, believe me, I know how you feel, so just sit right up on that stuff cross-legged, no problem. But those of us who, I'm going to pretend I'm not an old 50-year-old person and do this, okay? And then you're going to sit, and you don't have to think of some like perfect Iyengar style virasana. Your knees can be a little separate. If you get up on this propage and you're like, I feel nothing, it's not like virasana, that's great. I want you to feel nothing. I want you to be dead inside. Excise your soul and feel nothing. Okay. So I feel like feeling a lot is really overrated, you know? Okay. So sitting up, cross-legged again is fine. You could even put the blankets and props like on top of your heels and be in more kneeling position. Take the heels of your hands, you can do this cross-legged too, and find, I sort of call it the roots of the thighs. It's like where your quads, if we were to go deeper, your femur bones, the greater trochanter's out here on the outside of your thighs, if you want to just kind of feel that widest part of your upper outer thigh bones. But then the thigh bones take this little like turn, and that's where the ball is of your ball and socket hip joint. And the hip sockets themselves are actually more towards the anterior face of your pelvis, towards the front. So if you think of between your pubic bone, you can be touching your body. I know us Bard people love to touch ourselves. Pubic bone to ASIS, they're about halfway, your hip sockets towards the front, right? It's weird because we often think of the hips, we can touch here and think of our hips here and our hips, but the actual sockets are more towards the front and halfway between your pubic bone and ASIS. So anyways, I'm calling the roots of the thighs kind of below your hip sockets in this crease. So if you were to fold forward a little bit, your fingers would get kind of squashed in that crease. Okay, now I want you to take the heels of your hands and wedge them into the crease and push whatever there is there, fat, flesh, quad material, away a bit and shrug your shoulders. So you're just kind of like tractioning the flesh, skin, fascia, muscle. Fat's not a bad word. I think we can agree with that. We need fat. It stores interesting stuff. Too much, too little, yes, can be a problem, but push that. All of us have some fat there. Push it towards the knees, cells, blood, nerves, lymph, synovial fluid. Just think of like shunting those systems a little in the direction of the knees, and then ever so gently, don't think of this as like, like old school suck your belly back, although I am going to cue that. draw the front wall of the belly back, meaning towards your lumbar, and up and a little away from the heels of your hands. You might even feel something happening under the heels of your hands when you do this. You might even feel your torso lean back a little bit. Okay, and then the next time you exhale, exhale through your mouth. Empty the air out. See if you can hold the air out and then hoist without inhaling your rib cage up. Lift your rib cage up away from the heels of your hands and suck your belly back. Now it is like old-fashioned sucking back. Okay, release all that. Let your belly go. Let your diaphragm relax and inhale. Let your shoulders relax and just fold your hands in your lap and close your eyes if you can and notice the biomechanical nature of the inhale. So when you inhale and your lungs fill with air, your respiratory diaphragm three-dimensionally expands and lowers, right? It stretches multi-directionally like a trampoline. As the air fills your lung, it receives the weight. When you exhale, it domes up like a parachute towards your throat. As the air leaves your lungs and your rib cage gets involved, you're gonna participate with this, both intellectually, like visualize and language it in your own body, and somatically and in a physical way. So take some nice, slow, steady, intentional inhales and exhales and see if you can embody that movement of the inner world. And in this way, we're shifting from exercise to somatics, where we contact consciousness on a physical level. And through this funneling of our focus, you know, it also becomes this, it enters the category of what's broadly called yoga, like yoga casts a wide net. You know, I think a very overused word, but it does also cast a wide net, is mindfulness. So allow yourself to dive into that arena of inner exploration. I'd like you to also take your attention to the pelvic bowl, and there's a thing called the pelvic diaphragm. And when you inhale, the fibers of the pelvic diaphragm, similar, let's say, it's not the same shape, but I'm just going to use the analogy to a hammock. When you inhale and your respiratory diaphragm expands three-dimensionally, it's like a person. Your breath is, the person is your breath in this analogy. It's like a person getting into the hammock. The hammock stretches, it lowers towards the ground, but it doesn't touch the ground because it has the right amount of tension strung between the two trees. And as you exhale, it's like a person getting out of the hammock. The fibers narrow again, the hammock lifts a little away from the ground. Okay. Yeah, if you need to move it all out of the virasana, you're welcome to, or change your cross-legged position. We'll just be here for a few moments more. Now let your eyes open again and interlace your fingers, asana, palms facing your chest, elbows out to the side, and just drop and relax your shoulders. Don't drag them down actively, just let them relax and lift your elbows a little higher. Flip your palms to face forward and leading with your inner wrists rather than your knuckles, straighten your arms as best you can completely. And then when you're next ready to inhale, I want you to lift your arms up on either side of your head and let your shoulders lift any amount that they want to. Allow the shoulder blades to slide up on the back of the rib cage. See if you could stabilize the ribs. So draw your front ribs a little bit in like you did with the walls of the belly and let the shoulders themselves lift. Exhale, respiratory pelvic diaphragm lifts towards your throat as you lower your arms. Inhale, bend your elbows. Exhale, flip your palms to face your chest and change the interlacing of the hands. Inhale, relax your shoulders, lift your elbows. Exhale, flip your palms forward and straighten the arms. Inhale, notice the weight of the breath, putting the load on your diaphragms, both respiratory and pelvic diaphragm, as you lift the arms above your head. Exhale, hold. Imagine you could squeeze the sides of your head with your biceps, but you won't actually be doing that. Just think of that much firmness in the outer arm and the tricep area, allowing the scaps to lift any amount along the back of your rib cage. Beautiful. As you exhale, lower your straight arms out in front of you, perpendicular to your body. Inhale, bend the elbows. Exhale, relax your hands in your lap. Close your eyes again. Go back into the inner world. And now let that somatic journey of connecting to the biomechanical nature of the breath shift into a more mystical realm. So now We allow the breath to represent consciousness itself, and that is prelingual and postlingual consciousness, like before you learn to codify consciousness, which we call, language and thinking. Shout out to Bard. Bard, starts in early August with a language and thinking program. Okay, so pre-language and thinking, post-language and thinking. What does that mean? I guess maybe the easiest way we could think about it would be gravitational waves. The gravitational waves from the Big Bang are currently moving through our bodies and entering the earth. We just don't notice them, but they're being recorded in these crazy underground computers, the LIGO tunnels, I think they're called. So, this is interesting if we think that there's these pranic, these energetic currents like gravitational waves that are kind of telling the story of before and after. So let's allow the breath to guide us towards this aspect of aliveness, of I amness. In Sanskrit, it's called tattvamasi. And then as those currents move through form, through the body, we'll allow them to reveal their nadam, their sound vibration, as though we could hear gravitational waves as they enter earth or move through our bodies. And that is the sound Om. And we'll chant it together 3 times. Om. Excellent. Get your eyes open, take your hands out of prayer. Take the props under if you had props under your old arsh, take that away. Sorry for saying so much. Just move the props aside. We're going to use a block and a blanket again if you have that props. If you don't worry. And come onto your hands and knees. Once you're on your hands and knees, just stretch your left leg back, toes tucked, ball of the foot on the ground, and come into some hip and knee extension, right? Just coming out of that long time of flexion. Flexion in the knees and hips are when the knees are bended, for example, and like the thigh is pulled into your chest. And extension is this action. Okay, and then bend the left knee and do the same with the right. And you can pulse a little bit there. Just moving that femur bone, that big, heavy thigh bone up like it's hitting the back of your hamstring. And firm your glute as well. Your glute is your ass, by the way. You have a few of them. Those of you Bard people who didn't study anatomy. Okay, your right knee down. Now tense your hands. That's like you have little... You're just on all 10 finger tops. Tuck your toes under, open your knees a little bit, not super wide, just a tad, and bring the balls of your feet together, right? So you've got like a little tripod-y-like shape in the legs. Very subtle. It doesn't have to be super precise. And just shift your ass back towards your heels. So there's some more of that flexion, and you've got a little foot action there too. And I'm pulsing a little bit. Aim your sits bones, and I know for some of you this might be a strange direction, but towards the backs of your knees here. So it's not exactly a posteriorly tilted pelvis, but I want the current, the energy of the butt bones to go towards the backs of your knees. You might feel a little tug along the skin of your lumbar when you do that. Okay, and then come forward, shoulders over wrists. If you can't keep your hands tented with your shoulders over your wrists, go ahead and shift back and forward a few times. You're welcome to put them down. Can you coordinate with your breath? So if we were doing the same thing we did sitting, we'd be inhaling as we shift our ass back, like that was when the arms were on either side of our head, and exhaling forward. You know, there's no rules, even though we were told there was rules. Like you might be like, wait, you're supposed to exhale back into hip flexion. But you know, when you think about it, that's really insane to say you only exhale in flexion. It makes no sense whatsoever. So, you know, break that simple rule, inhale back, exhale forward. Of course, you could also exhale back and it feels lovely as well, but the breath is very multifaceted, multidimensional in what it can offer each shape. Okay, now place the palms of your hands down. An easy way to do that is if you just reach your thumbs towards each other and retract your shoulders, anteriorly tilt your pelvis. But flexible women, my friends, whenever you do that, I still want you to think of sits bones down and tailbone up. Is it possible to differentiate tailbone, butt bones? Only you can know, but try it. And then exhale, posteriorly tuck round. Now the sits bone and tailbone will move down and round. So very simple cat-cow. Go ahead and inhale into cat. That's your spinal flexion. You're rounded back with your tailbone tucked. And exhale into cow. And when you exhale into cow, can you lift the front walls of the belly even though you're in an anterior tilt? I'm swinging my hips a little side to side. And suck the floor of your pelvis, like if your groin, your crotch was your mouth and you just tasted lemon, when you're in the cow pose. So kind of pull in with the walls of the belly and suck, okay? Now keep moving through those actions, but shift forward and back so that you're doing cat-cow, inhaling in cat counterintuitively, exhaling in cow, and shifting forward and back. So it becomes a little like snaky-like and undulating. Couple more breaths there. And then come neutral and into downward facing dog. Okay? Once you're in dog pose, push the floor away and think of when you had your fingers interlaced and you were reaching your arms above your head, and let your shoulders shrug a little bit. Let them slide up your back, and by up I mean towards your earlobes. And feel free to bend your knees. And put a little, even if you can lower your heels to the floor, put a little imaginary wedge between your heels and the floor. So you're not high up on the balls of your feet, but they're purposefully off the ground. And hug your triceps in, let your head relax, shake it out a little bit, and see if you could play around with aiming your ischial tuberosities, your butt bones, towards your heels and your tailbone back and up. Almost impossible, but yet still interesting. Lift the front walls of the belly and then pedal the feet. So straighten your left leg and send the center of the left heel towards the ground. It's mostly genetic, whether it touches or not. Sometimes it takes a little adjustment of the distance between hands and feet. But some of us will never touch our heels. Some of us will. Sorry, but most of the stuff is genetic. It's not about how hard you work, how much effort you put in, how hot the room is. It's simply how you were born. Okay. Then come forward to plank. Remember, you can always lower your knees, crown of the head reaching forward, tailbone back. Take one full breath in plank. Lift the front walls of your belly. And then exhale, lower your knees. We're going to do what I call a knees down, upward facing dog. It's exactly what it sounds like. You're going to come into up dog, but simply keep your knees on the ground and keep your toes tucked. So it's very active in the glutes. Okay, and you can always shift your hips a little farther back or forward. Push the floor away with your hands. Do actively slide your shoulder blades down the back ribs a little bit. Move your upper arm bones back, firm your glutes, and notice this extra hip extension here. Remember how I said hip extension was when we were on all fours straightening one leg? Now you have extra there. Okay, now you're gonna lay your pelvis on the floor, bend your elbows, retract your shoulders vigorously like you were holding a nut between your shoulder blades, and slowly lay the front of your body down. Make a little pillow for your forehead or cheek with your hands. So stack them, turn your head to the left, and anchor your pubis into the ground a lot. So you feel it really firmly touching the ground, your pubic bone. And you might feel the front walls of the belly lift a little away from the ground. And then bend your right knee, kicking your heel towards your butt, but do not let the tilt of your pelvis change. So you're pressing your pubis towards the ground and kicking your heel towards the butt. And release the right leg. Now, turn your big toes to face each other, let your heels fall apart, and completely relax. And notice what your pelvis does when you relax your glutes. There's no wrong or right. I just want you to see, for many of us, we go into an anterior tilt. There's nothing wrong with that. Let it happen. Let your belly fall to the floor. Maybe you feel your pubis lift away from the ground. It won't happen for all of us. Some of us will have more default neutral pelvis or even posterior. Okay, then separate your feet. Exhale, press your pubis actively to the ground. Lift your navel away and bend your left knee without tilting the pelvis and kick the heel towards your glute. I'm hoping you feel a little simple, not a big feeling, but extension over the left quad, fascia, and even iliacus, and like maybe even a little bit up towards the front of the pelvis. It depends. Firm the glute. Okay, then straighten the left leg, touch the big toes, open the heels. Take a big inhale, and then the next time you exhale, you can always bring your forehead to the backs of your hands. Zip your heels together, squeeze your feet together, squeeze your legs together, squeeze your ass super tight, and tuck your pubic bone up towards your navel a lot. So this is a posterior pelvic tilt. If your heels come apart, don't worry, but try to keep them together, but don't worry if they come apart. And then imagine if your low sternum and your pubic bone, there was a zipper there. Zip them towards each other so that now your knees are down, your feet are down, but you're actually floating your pelvis off the ground with a posterior tuck. Really firm in the low belly. You might even feel some of your upper belly muscles lifting away from the ground. Work it. It's hard. It's a core conditioning exercise. Then lower the pubic bone. So now you're no longer floating the pelvis. Stick with me here and bend both knees and kick the heels towards your glutes. Your legs will separate a little bit. With really firm glutes, really squeezing your pubic bone towards the ground. Okay. Straighten your legs, tuck the toes, slide the hands back for cobra. Pause, come to a little baby cobra. Now you probably have to slide the hands a little farther back and then come back up to your knees down, up dog. Lift the front walls of the belly. Pretend a tether line grabbed your tailbone from the wall behind you and pull up to all fours. And come into downward facing dog. Okay, in downward facing dog, lean your weight a little to the left and float your right leg up, bend the knee, kick the heel to your glute, and I don't care here if you want to turn the right half of the pelvis on top of the left, open the hip so to speak, or keep the hip square, that's up to you. Just kick the heel towards the glute and feel free to bend the left knee. Okay, and then straighten and lower the right leg. Lean the weight to the right. Lift the left leg up. Super simple. Kick the heel to the glute. Open the hip or don't, or do both, right? Explore square hips and open hips. Kick the heel in. Step the left foot down. Inhale, come forward to plank. Moving a little faster now. Exhale, lower the knees. Inhale, knees down, upward facing dog. Exhale, pass through cobra. Take your time. Hold the imaginary nut between your scaps. Lower the forehead, make a little pillow for your hands. Exhale, squeeze your heels together, tuck your tailbone, float the pelvis up. I call this conditioning shalabhasana. It's not quite complete yet, the shape. We have to add another element in, but we will later. So heels squeezing, feet squeezing, posterior pelvic tuck, belly lifting, okay? Then kick both heels in towards your glutes a few times like you were squeezing an air-filled ball. Straighten your legs, separate them, slide the hands back to cobra, slide them farther back if need be, knees down, upward dog, pull up to all fours. Now exhale, tense your hands, walk your hands as far forward as you can, lift your upper arm bones like you're hollowing your armpits, and shift back to extended child's pose. Similarly to what we did earlier, it's just you're reaching a little farther forward. If your rib cage is on your quads, on your thighs, could you slide the ribs more towards the hip creases? Like you were trying to move your sternum away from your chin and maybe let your hairline touch the ground. Okay, big breath there. Okay, come to the palms of your hands, come forward to all fours, exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, float your right leg up, open the hip and the knee. Exhale, slide the right knee for a very upright, active pigeon. So don't sink to the ground. I want your hips purposefully up. If you have two blocks, you can put them under your hands, or you just lean forward and lift your hips, up to you. And draw your back knee and front knee towards each other so it feels like your pelvis is lifting off the ground. The back leg looks similar to the tuck toes, knees down, upward dog. Okay, and don't worry if you have to raise your hips up a little more. Kick the left heel towards your glute a couple times. I like to alternate between flexing and pointing the foot. Squeeze an imaginary ball between your heel and the glute. Okay, release. If you have blocks, take them aside. Pretend you were just coming to quadruped to all fours. So lift your hips higher. It'll suck the left knee in and slide your right knee next to it. Inhale, knees down, upward dog. Notice how the left leg was just in that similar position when you were in pigeon. Exhale, pass through cobra, lower. Now we're gonna add the arms into that weird little core conditioning thing. So you're gonna slide your arms out to either side of your head, tense your hands, tip of nose or forehead to the ground, zip your legs together, tuck the tailbone, knees down, hands or all 10 fingertips down, tip of nose or forehead down or face just hovering above the ground, and tuck the tailbone and float the pelvis up off the ground and lift the belly as high as you can. Maybe even some of your low front ribs lift away from the ground. Inhale, cobra. Tuck your toes, slide your hands back, knees down, upward facing dog. Exhale, all fours. Inhale, downward facing dog. Exhale, hold. Inhale, float your left leg up. Open the hip, bend the knee, kick the heel towards the glute. Exhale, left-sided pigeon, upright, super active. Blocks or no blocks, up to you. Suck the back knee and front knee towards each other isometrically, so you feel like you're kind of zipping into the midline. And then when you're ready, kick the right heel towards your glute. Couple of breaths there, and moving on. Okay, move the blocks aside. Pretend you were, lower the right foot, pretend you were sliding up to all fours, so the right knee gets sucked in, then step the left knee back. Okay, we're almost moving on to a different sequence here, but we'll repeat this part. Knees down, upward dog, pass through cobra. Exhale, inhale, stretch the arms out. This weird prostration shape. Squeeze your heels, tip of the nose to the ground or forehead. Exhale, tuck your tailbone, float the belly up, float the pelvis up. Inhale, cobra. Exhale, hold. Inhale, knees down, toes tucked, upward dog. Exhale, push up to all fours. Inhale, shift back to tented hands, extended child's pose. Exhale, pull forward to all fours. Inhale, downward facing dog. Exhale, hold. Inhale, float your right leg up, open the hip and the knee. Use a cat spine as you draw the right knee towards your chest, and a big exhale to step the right foot forward. Round your back. Bend the left knee too, tuck the knee in, and step forward. Bend your left knee, not to the ground, but just a bit, and lift up with your hands on your hips, a balancing high lunge. Okay, so both knees bent, you can pulse a little there. Firm your left glute. And then slowly tease out the left leg towards straight and rebend. Take your middle fingers to your ASIS and around that front right hip crease, and just play with keeping the pelvis upright. It is in an anterior tilt, but just play with keeping it upright as you look for hip extension on the left side. So you're just bending and straightening a bit, okay? Then come to any straight or bend you want on the left leg. Don't force it all the way straight. Clasp your hands together, Baddha-Asana, elbows up, shoulders relaxed. Stretch your arms out straight in front of you. And inhale, lift your arms above your head like you did sitting. Couple of breaths. Feel the weight of the inhale and the lift of both diaphragms on the exhale. Another time, weight of the inhale. Now push the ceiling up with your hands. On the exhale, bend the left knee and lower it to the ground. Excellent. Now shift your hips back so it's not a crescent lunge, so that your left hip is over your left knee. You might even have to slide your right foot in more. Beautiful. And firm your glute and tilt your pubis a little towards your navel. Think of that conditioning Shalabhasana. That doesn't mean move the pelvis forward. It just means tilt the pubis, the pubic symphysis, up towards your belly button. Okay, lower your hands to the ground on either side of your right foot or to blocks, and straighten both legs, hamstring extension. Feel free to bend and straighten your right leg as you like, or hold still. I'd like you to think of right butt bone tracing a line to the center of your right heel. Right butt bone tracing a line to the center of your right heel as the tailbone moves straight back. And I know my live people, it's hard to see me, but just follow my cues. I know I'm a little bit in contrast there. Okay. Bend your right knee, move the blocks aside. I'm going to stay on tented hands to come to plank. If you're not used to that, put your hands flat and step into plank. Okay? Downward facing dog on tented hands. Excellent. Float your left leg up, open the hip, bend the knee. Round your back, tuck your tailbone. Exhale, step the left foot forward. Inhale, bend the right knee a bit and come up to your hands on your hips. And so now you're in this high lunge with both knees bent, a little bit of pulse there. Palpating the front of your pelvis, finding your ASIS. And then slowly straightening your right leg and rebending. And just notice where you feel. As the right leg straightens, do you feel any kind of shearing and tugging in the right hip socket? If you do, then lay off it a little bit. Go less straight. Use your glute more. Think about maybe it feels better to let your pelvis go into a little bit more of an anterior tilt. Okay? Come to that lunge that you like. Interlace your fingers, other finger over top. Elbows bent, shoulders relaxed. Stretch your arms out in front of you perpendicular, and then lift your arms above your head. About 3 breaths. Inhaling, exhaling 1, inhaling, exhaling 2, another breath, inhaling, exhaling 3. Lower your hands, straighten both legs. You can always bring your back knee down as you like. You could bend your back knee a little bit, but aim your left sit bone towards your left heel. Excellent. When you're ready, come to plank. Good. Knees down. Now pause. You're going to isometrically tug your hands and knees towards each other so your head pitches forward. Kind of like when you use that tension in Pigeon to lift the pelvis. Now it's just helping lift the core. And all you're going to do is bend your elbows for a knees down chaturanga. And then from your knees down chaturanga, you're going to go to knees down up dog. Lift the front walls of your belly again back to all fours. Exhale, extended child's pose with the hands tented. Let the head gently float through the arms as you lift the arms up as high as you can, even though your fingertips are on the ground. Good. And then inhale, come to all fours. Now, here is where you might have just a blanket. If you have a blanket and a block, you're going to put a block down horizontally and plop the blanket on top. And, if you don't have props, you can do everything I'm saying without a prop. You could also choose to put 2 blocks under your hands for this lunge sequence rather than using it under the right thigh, okay? So what I want you to do is slide the prop over to the left side of the mat and bring your hands over to the left side too. Like my left hand is off the mat, so it's just a little weird and your knees are down, you're a little askew, okay? And then step your right foot off the right side of the mat or right to the edge of it, okay? Then walk your hands a little forward but diagonal. So your hands are away from the right foot on the left side of the mat and your right foot's on the right side of the mat. And if you're a bigger person like me, you might be off the mat. And then lift your left quad onto that little block and blanket roll, okay? You can turn your right foot out, but not your kneecap. All right, now if you're there and you're like, oh boy, this is too much, no problem. Just stay right there. Don't take any other actions that I'm saying or take your leg off the prop completely, okay? You can walk pretty far. Like both my hands are off the sticky mat and my right foot's off to the right edge of the mat, okay? Pause there. Try to find some spinal extension. And then when you're ready, point your left foot, all 10 toes, the metatarsal sides on the ground, right? So kind of like classic up dog in the left leg. Okay, and then slowly squeeze the imaginary ball. Firm your left glute actively, right? So if your glute is a little bit sleepy, you might have to say to yourself, am I actively firming it? Ooh, and squeeze the imaginary ball. Now, do emotions live in the hips and quads? You know, I'm gonna say no. But like, I think you could have somebody like Mother Teresa, although I guess she was supposed to be an asshole, it turns out, but let's just say she wasn't an asshole. Mother Teresa could have firm quads, tight quads, you know, and still be nice. I'm trying to think of someone I know that's nice and has tight quads. They're out there, believe me. But I think the problem is most people are assholes. So I can't think of any nice people. Okay, release your left quad at that. Stretch your left leg out. Good. And slowly slide your knee to the ground so your leg will no longer be on the props. Okay, move the prop over to the other, actually don't move it to the other side yet. Step your right foot back. Move that propage, and again, you can just do this on the ground a little forward, and all you're gonna do is place both elbows on the prop with your knees bent, and you're kind of come into that similar extended child's pose with your hands in prayer and your elbows elevated. So more of a tricep extension, okay? You might feel your hairline or forehead on the block, it's up to you, and just enjoy that. So, but what I was going to say is we can kind of embody a somatic poetry. So when we feel tension being let go of, you know, which we often think of as stretching, sure, we could say, okay, yeah, we're holding tension in our quads, and that could be used if we're aware that it's a poetic analogy to, you know, also release psychological tension. We could release psychic tension. But when we start to take it too literally is when it can get problematic. You know, it can be sort of weaponized against us or against other people. So yes, allow yourself to find that poetry of the body, you know, the somatic poetry, and let some stuff go with the breath, with the quad extension. Okay, changing sides. Slide the little props back and over to the right. Step your left foot forward as far off to the left as you want. Walk your hands to the right, and then go ahead and hoist the right quad up on it. Okay, and look, you could lean on one hand. Like on this side, it's harder for me because it's my funky old right hip, so I'm leaning a little more than I did on the other side. You could also scrub a little forward and back isometrically, like pendiculate a little bit. Point your right foot, think of that up dog. Notice where there's tension and holding. You know, my right hip socket is always trying to like hold itself together after me trying to pull it apart in yoga for so many years. So it's like, no, don't pull me apart. Firm your right glute. That'll help you with the hip socket. Oh yeah, baby. Love it. Oh, love the glute squeeze. And then bend the right knee. It feels so good on my hip. And pulse in. I feel that all the way up into my iliacus and even some low belly muscles there. Breathe. Remember that you could easily release all of this tension and then go home and be a complete dickhead to your family. So understand that, you know, it's not, you know, don't congratulate yourself too much for this work, but yet sure, let go of some tension. Oh yeah, I'm getting a little more into the inner quad here by rotating a bit, and I get all the way up into the groin. Whew, okay, let it go. Slide off the block. Slide your left foot back. Move the prop aside. I'm going to get a little more undulating here. So I'm going to shift back in a cat spine, in a flexion spine, and roll into the knees down, up dog. Head the last thing to come up. Okay, and then exhale, lay your pelvis on the floor like you were going to come through cobra, but instead lean to the left and walk your right hand out to the right side of the mat. I made that big smacking sound just to make it more obvious. And the left side. Sometimes this is called seal pose. So your hands are quite far out in front of your pelvis and chest, as wide as or wider than the sticky mat, turned out a little bit. Pelvis very firm, and open your legs as wide as the mat. And I know this is very counterindicative to us yoga people, but you're going to let your legs turn out a little bit, right? So you look a little bit more ballet-like. Firm those glutes, and then drag your upper thoracic spine forward a lot, like you're trying to move the upper back spine towards the front spine. Let your shoulders slide down the back, bend your elbows a little, firm your pubis. If this hurts your lumbar, it is spinal compression, okay? It's when you're in a back bend, the back of the spine is compressed, the front of the spine is lengthening. Lower down a little more, right? Or firm your glutes more, right? If you're enjoying it, stay as you are, okay? Pubic bone heavy, firm glutes, front walls of the belly lifted, chest moving forward and up. And then if and when you're ready, bend both knees and kick the heels towards your glutes. I like to bring the big toes to touch, even though the knees are wide, so that I can kind of use my feet to kick in. Inhale. Think of your transverse abs, the low belly. The fibers go horizontally, like from the center out to the right and to the left. Think of them smiling a little, like your transverse abs were the corners of your mouth lifting up a little, out to the sides and up. I call it the Mona Lisa smile of the transverse abs. Okay, one more breath, and then release your legs, slowly lower down. We're taking that weird conditioning Shalabhasana. Slide your arms out in front of you, tent the hands, squeeze your legs and heels together, tuck and lift. That should feel very like restorative and therapeutic from after all the hip extension. So your knees are down, you're tucking your tailbone, and you're actively lifting your pelvis and your belly off the ground. But so different than knees, chest, chin position, like when your ass is sticking up into the air. Okay, inhale, slide your hands back under your shoulders, little cobra. And from little cobra, take a big exhale through your mouth and push up to all fours. Good. Downward facing dog when you're ready. Okay, float your right leg up, open the knee, open the hip, bend the knee. I don't know how to open the knee. And exhale, step the right foot forward, prep the back leg for a warrior two, pause. Right, so I don't want to be too fussy about the distribution with your feet, just as you like. And then bring your right forearm up onto your right thigh. So you kind of crawled up and take your left hand to your left hip. So it looks a little bit like an extended side angle. You can make a fist with your right hand and turn the palm of the fist to the ceiling. Adjust if necessary here. pulse a little by, like we got bend the right knee a little more and then come towards straight, but not all the way straight. Okay. Find the right place there. Let's take a little extended angle. So let's bring the left arm behind us, palm facing away, thumb facing down, and retract the shoulder and turn the right side of the chest towards the left. Then, as you trace the horizon line with your left hand, externally rotate the arm. The thumb will face up, the palm will face forward, and reach it overhead. Just a couple breaths in this simple, modified extended angle. Look down at the ground, at the space to the left side of your right foot, right? We had our hands there in that quad stretching lunge earlier. Go ahead and reach with your left hand and tense your hand and place it on the ground off the mat on the left side. And then your right hand. Okay, and then straighten your right leg. It's weird. It's almost like your legs are in triangle, but your hands are on the left. Okay, and rebend. Straighten and rebend a couple of times. Okay, then place your right hand down and stick your right ass out behind you. Okay, so feel a little bit of you can even take your left hand off the ground. It's like your groins are sweeping back behind you. See if you could tense your right hand, but it's still off the mat. And then take your left hand to your hip and see if you could take the back of your left hand to your upper outer right hip and now draw it in or forward. It depends how you look. I'm thinking of forward is in the direction that my chest is facing. Okay, and then when you're ready, saddle your right inner ankle with your right hand. Thumb around the Achilles, forefingers around the front of the ankle, and lean back and maybe half bind. Don't worry if you don't want to half bind. We're almost done with this shape. Okay, then lower both hands. Tent them if you like. Straighten your right leg, more square hips, tighter to the midline here. And then step into downward facing dog. Okay, and we'll just change sides. Inhale, left leg lifts, open the hip, bend the knee. Exhale, step the left foot forward. Inhale, prep the back foot for Vira 2. I'm just moving around so that my back isn't to you. And then float the left forearm on the left thigh and take the right hand to the right hip and just find your stance here. Okay, when you're ready, turn the armpit chest is where your side boob and the front crease of your armpit are. Turn the left armpit chest towards the ceiling. Reach your right arm behind you, push an imaginary wall away with your right hand and retract the shoulder. Okay, then slowly sweep the right arm along the horizon overhead. Extended side angle modified. We're going to be in it again in a few moments from a different direction. Look down to the right side of your left foot and place your right hand on the ground and your left hand on the ground and stick your ass out. You should feel a little bit more like that in the upper left groin area. Okay, straighten the left leg. So now it's a weirdly it's a bit of a hamstring, a bit of a inner thigh stretch. More inner hamstring. Breathe. Bend the the left knee. And then you could take your right hand to the groin. And I want you to move the right upper inner thigh and groin. Take your right hand to your left groin. Move your left inner thigh against the hand, right? That's you basically bringing the outer hip in. And then you're going to want to lean back when you do that, right? You'll just organically lean back like a seesaw and saddle the ankle. And then take your right hand behind you. And maybe with the back of your right hand, you can firm the upper outer left hip forward and start to turn the armpit chest. You're basically there, right? You could take your hand higher up the shin. You could half bind. Just a couple more breaths. Okay, look down, frame the foot, come into more belly of the left hamstring extension, more on the midline. Bend the knee, plant the hands, and step into downward facing dog. Okay, come forward to plank, lower your knees, sit back on your heels, and now take one of your blankets. And again, you can do all of this without a blanket, but this will be helpful. And unfold it so it's a long rectangle, and then roll it up. And then you're going to come into that very similar, you're going to come into the same shape we were in before, that seal pose. It was like that weird version of cobra and up dog, but with the roll basically in your low belly pelvis area. It really depends what keeps you very propped. So it should feel super, super easy, and it's giving a little feedback to your belly. And you're gonna open your feet at least as wide as the sticky mat and firm your glutes. So the distance of your hands is up to you. They could be more forward, they could be more up. Yes, again, it's back spine compression, but it shouldn't be painful. So most people already know this, but like a lot of times it depends where your bulging disc is. People with back issues, this often is restorative, whereas, you know, people used to think this was counter indicative, you know, for therapeutic back work, but this can be very restorative. It really depends. Okay. So let the roll be in a part of your belly that's useful, you know, that's giving you that feedback. And then exhale, you're gonna bring your left forearm down and forward and in front of the roll, right? So you got a little prop there, and bend your right knee. Okay, then you're gonna reach back. I'm doing an externally rotated arm, it's up to you, and take the foot, and I leaned a little to the left here, and draw the heel towards the glute. But if you're super flexible, and if you care to look at me and I kind of look like that, I want you to resist. I want you to firm that glute. Remember the beginning of class when you pressed your pubic bone into the ground? As you kicked your heels in, you didn't have your hand in that moment. So I want you to remember that tension when you didn't have your hand. But yes, now your hand's giving you a little help. If you love Bekasana and you want to flip into Bekasana, go ahead. I just want to remind you to try to get the heel of your hand more on the metatarsal side of the foot, like more on the bones, less on the toes. If you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, you just hold the foot, right? That's all. Okay, breathe. Then once you're there, try to get some more even weight across the front of the pelvis, like evenly distributing between right half and left half. See if you could keep your foot exactly where it is. It's gonna take a lot of glute and hamstring work, and let go of it. Oh, I'm trying. Almost impossible. And let it go. Back to seal pose. Enjoy it. You could even shrug the shoulders a little in seal. Sometimes I kind of hump the mat a little bit, smear my pelvis around on it. Okay, and then when you're ready, right forearm parallel, left knee bends, reach back, any grip that works for you. Start slow, push your own foot into your hand as your own hand pulls the heel. If you feel any pain in your knee, you need to back off, maybe come more forward. Okay, use your glute more. And those of you who love Bekasana, you'll come to Bekasana. But I'm not going to teach the details of it today. Try to even out the pelvis. Lower your right shoulder, that loaded arm down the back a little bit, and breathe. We're going to turn this half, you know, this left side quad stretch and or Bekasana into a dhanurasana. So when you're ready, you're going to change the grip on your left foot to take the front of the ankle or the foot. Kick the foot back now, so you'll no longer feel as much in the quad, so you won't need your right arm anymore, and bend your right knee. And then kick it back enough that you can come into dhanurasana where the thighs stay on the ground. Now, if you hate this, just get rid of the roll and do regular old dhanurasana where you're lifting your chest and thighs. Point the feet or flex them up to you, but try to press the pubic bone down. And now I kind of barely feel my belly on the roll, but it is helping. Retract your shoulders. Send the breath up into the armpit chest. Soften your head. Turn it a little bit. No. Tuck the chin in a little. Lift it a bit. Big breath in. Lift the front walls of your belly. Big breath out. Listen, you're going to scoot forward so that the roll will be, remember where the heels of our hands were in the beginning of class? Up in the creases of the thighs. You're going to have the roll there. So your pelvis will be exactly the opposite of conditioning Shalabhasana. It's going to be in an anterior tilt. Your belly will be falling forward off the roll. The roll will be across the hip creases. Big toes touching heels apart, and then just smear your pelvis a little side to side and relax, head to one side. Let the breath go into your belly. Let it kind of fall to the ground. Or do an intentional belly breath more precisely. And then notice it lifting gently away, but don't try to control it. Okay, you could bend the knees too. Notice how it's so much easier to bend the knees here and kick your heels to your glutes in this anterior tilt. You know, for me, it's like not even a quad stretch at all, but I'm just kind of kicking my shins and feet loosely and letting my feet go floppy. One more breath there. Take a sigh through your mouth. Okay, release the legs. Slide backwards enough that you can just push off. with your elbows on the roll again. One more of those child's pose, tricep extension, hands in prayer. Okay, and then you guys all lay on your backs. I'm gonna sit upright. And when you're on your backs with your knees bent and your feet flat, kind of like you were gonna do bridge, but you're not, pause. Loosen your arms by your side, palms up. And then just do the amount of hip flexion. So listen before you do. Hip flexion again is where your knee pulls into your chest, right? But you're not gonna use your arms here. Just do the amount of hip flexion required to point your feet and be very light on the tips of your big toes, like you had point shoes on in ballet. So yes, you'll have to tuck your, exactly, like let your feet float a little, but then once you're there, heavy the sacrum and the tailbone. If you know neutral pelvis, be in neutral pelvis, so your lumbar, if you don't have like any rods or not strange, but surgeries in your back, your lumbar, if you have the natural curve, will be gently off the ground, sacrum heavy, tailbone heavy. Let your arms be loose by your side, palms up. Take a big inhale. And when you exhale, ever so subtly, let the right thigh, right heel is towards your glute, just real loose shin and foot. Let your right thigh fall towards your chest a little bit, but without using a posterior pelvic tilt, right? Like just suss out the amount of hip flexion you have there, right? Inhaling and exhaling there. You might inhale, tap your right big toe to the ground, exhale, draw the thigh in. It's up to you. It doesn't have to come all the way out. It's actually, actually quite a hard core work in my opinion, but very subtle. And then when you're ready, just change sides. Like you might keep your right big toe down and hover your left and then bring the left thigh a little closer and then hover, or you might be tapping your left toe to the ground and lifting up. Okay, no rush, using your breath in your own way, super simple, just kind of thinking of it as kind of massaging the femoral heads and the hip sockets. We did a lot of hip extension, so now it's flexion. And then do what I call, sorry for my coughing, prancing horse, which is just basically you open the chain a little bit and you just pass your feet, tapping the right toe and the left toe, super subtle and easy. Don't lift the shins yet, it's just hip flexion. You got it. Everybody that I can see has it. Great. Beautiful. And then lower your feet and stretch out for Savasana. Take some moments to come into Savasana and, make sure you have room, space, you're comfortable. I was going to say get warm stuff on, but because I'm not used to teaching in the heat, it was just habitual. But you don't need to get warm stuff on. I mean, I don't know, maybe someone's in Canada. Is Canada cold right now? I don't know. Hey, Louie, can you hear me? I need water. Sorry. What a lovely Savasana. Okay, I'm going to stop coughing and sneezing in a moment. Come still, I'll be right back. Hey, Lou. Could you bring me some water? Thank you so much. I'm still in class. Did you see those tacos? Yeah. All right, I'm back with you all. I'm aware that you can hear everything I'm saying, by the way. Okay, and shift to the autonomic rhythm of your breath. So that just means that you're letting go of all that amazing control that you applied for the whole class, and now you're simply letting the autonomic nervous system dictate the pattern, the rhythm that the breath is moving in. On the elemental action of the exhale, return back to that idea of those gravitational waves and let them both move through you, but also think of the gravitational waves as kind of bringing with them the form. In Sanskrit, it's called prakriti, like the layers of skeletal systems, of muscular ligaments, tendons, again, fluid systems, cellular systems, etc., nervous systems. And just deliver those systems into the hand of gravity. You could think of the hand of gravity like a big spider web, a net that kind of clings to the body, to the layers that you're allowing to let go, to shadanam, to surrender. And on the elemental action of the inhale, again, you're not controlling it, you're just kind of riding those pranic currents. Let that consciousness expand, again, in this pre and post-lingual state, the simple action of aliveness. In Sanskrit, it's called Sat Chit Ananda, limitless expansion of pure consciousness. So it's almost like repulsive feedback, you know, how the earth offers a force back. You're traveling back up and out, but now you're freed from the dogma of form, the codification of consciousness. You're freed from that, you know, otherwise known as one, the body, which is limited, right? It only has a certain lifespan. And two, the dogma of intellect and emotionality and emotional capacity, which is also quite limited and fairly repetitive and obsessive. It's fairly, I was going to say it's fairly one-dimensional. That said, of course, it's the great human gift that we, reflect on consciousness and create amazing works of art, amazing feats of imagination. That said, that same gift limits us in the, hamster wheel of regret and anticipation. I'm just really stating the nutshell of yoga philosophy. So we give ourselves this reprieve from the dogma of intellectual capacity, only to then return to it with more enthusiasm, more spontaneity, more imagination. Lay your hands along your body anywhere you like and just let them rest there heavily. And return form back from the hand of gravity. So it's almost like that the expansive quality of consciousness is now kind of being tethered back to form, and form is being lifted back up to the surface of earth. So there's this yoga of sorts, this yoking between the two extremes. And find yourself, the beginning, middle, and the narrative arc of self, of jiva, the individual. And notice when the limitless quality of consciousness, when we're speaking from a yogic Vedantic point of view, is returned to body, to human form, it's almost like it celebrates its awareness of itself as nadam, as sound vibration. And so then the body delivers the story of pure consciousness as the sound Om. We'll chant it together to end class 3 times. You can stay right on your backs and lay your hands. Om. Bolo Sakuru Bhagavan Ki Jai. Thanks. Bard friends, old friends, new friends, I don't know who's actually took this class, but yeah, maybe I'll see some of you when I drop the young lady off in August. And yeah, I'm sort of, slightly embarrassed that I'm still teaching yoga after all these years, but I started at Bard College Gym, may I help you? And here I am, still doing it. Oh, honey. Okay, now, see ya later, Bardians.